Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to take a look at the idea of PSYOPs. I guess there are a few schools of thought. One sort of a number of articles I've seen online says, well, PSYOPs are sort of everywhere. They're kind of entrenched in the Western, the globalists use it to sort of mind focus and so on. On the other side, it's sure there's one or two PSYOP type things going on, but really it's not that big a deal. To the other extreme where PSYOPs, that's all bullshit. There's no such thing as a PSYOP. You wacko, right wing conspiracy theory, fascist Nazi nut. So you can get that's sort of the spectrum of thought that's out there. So let me just let's just take a sort of deeper dive into that. Now, I suppose we could play around with the definition of what is a PSYOP. To me, a PSYOP is anything that willfully is attempting to change your mind for the purposes of controlling you and controlling what you think and so on, rather than giving you the option of making a choice. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that the globalist project is ideological. They are imposing it upon us without our consent or agreement, and it's among its primary purposes to deny us choice and to remove all choice from our day-to-day decision making, much as it was, or much as it is in the communist countries and was in say the Soviet Union. You weren't given a choice on any sort of choice of how you would view politics or government or structure of government, what you would buy at the shops. Choice wasn't part of the issue. There was just one brand of raincoat and one brand of motor vehicle. And that was it. So choice. As soon as you allow people choice, then you allow them sort of freedom of decision making. And that is exactly the opposite of what any ideologically imposed government wants. And make no mistake, globalization is the imposition of ideological government, again, without us choosing it or without our consent. So, but coming back to the PSYOP thing, so the definition of PSYOP, in my view, is something that particularly where it's divorced from fact and reality, where it's trying to change your mind, but it's not telling you it's doing it. I don't mind if the most outrageous propaganda is being put out there, as long as it says this is a documentary or this is a movie or this is a whatever that has been crafted to tell you a shitload of lies, to change your mind, to deceive you, to confuse you, to fuck you up and mind fuck you. And so, I don't mind if that warning's there, but it's not how things work. So let's look at what is a PSYOP. Because I had this conversation with somebody online, and that they think PSYOPs is something that doesn't really exist. That it was the only PSYOPs were when the US was trying to escalate the war with Vietnam and was the Gulf of Tonkin incident, these sorts of things to justify the escalation of the war. That's a PSYOP, but anything that all white people are Nazis. Hate crimes are everywhere. Nazis are everywhere. Women are being, massively raped, but only by straight white males. These sorts of things, they're not PSYOPs because, well, ideologically, they're dear to our hearts on the left. So ideology is clearly a big issue of how you interpret what is and isn't a PSYOP. But let me have a look at, I'll use a few examples here, but here's one where this is a entertainment sort of TV series in a white European country. Now, about 8%, less than 10% of the population is non-white here. So in this country, but 50% of all the relationships, intimate relationships, were mixed race. 50%. Now, the reality is that 0.1% of the relationships are mixed race. And in fact, not even that, it's slightly under that. So why are they depicting 50% of relationships as mixed race when clearly that's not the case? So that to me is a PSYOP. Why are they pushing that? Now you can reflect somewhere approximating reality, but they're pushing an agenda. It just so happens that the people funding this program are activist groups wanting to push mass migration. Now that should be declared. So because that's not declared and they have a clear agenda and they're reflecting it in the artificial presentation or representation of mixed race relationships, then that is, to my way of thinking, it's a PSYOP. Now you can say, well, hey, isn't James Bond a PSYOP? You've got this guy who's running around, karate chopping his way through all the bad guys and all this sort of stuff. No, that's fantasy entertainment. Everybody knows that James Bond can't jump from a 100-story building and land at his feet. You know that it's fantasy, but this isn't. It's presenting the real world in a way that it isn't even close to being in reality. So again, I come to the side. The next thing is 20% of the characters are gay or lesbian. That's not true. There's no way that you've got that sort of representation in society. So that's a PSYOP. Now, one of a wealthy character in this program said, "Well, I want to get the very best lawyer in the country, the best lawyer, because I need to." And who is the best lawyer in the country? It's a black woman. Now, in that particular, and I've checked, in that particular country, there was zero, there's a couple of legal aid flunkies, but there wasn't any black lawyers at all. And the idea that the best lawyer in the whole country was a black woman, I mean, you've got to be kidding me. Again, that in my view, that's there to change minds out of all reality. Maybe it's a future reality they want to exist, but there's no reality. And the likelihood that the best lawyer is going to be a white male is about 100%. So they're misrepresenting there. Again, they're pushing the agenda. That is a PSYOP. Black female lawyer is the best lawyer in the whole country. And then I could go, and the list goes on. The most moral, honest, upstanding citizens are all black. All the bad people, the evil people, are all white and male. The only bad people are white and male. Now they have the most prominent roles in the series, so they're the highest paid, most employable actors there, but they're presented as being truly evil and truly bad, where all the black people are completely moral, upstanding citizens that lecture the white people about their wickedness and their evilness. Again, a complete reversal of all reality. You've got this mama wearing African clothes, by the way, speaking with a heavy Caribbean accent, giving moral lectures to all the white people. The list, the children, every child, 3/4 of the children in this show as a result of mixed race procreation. Again, you just don't see that. I mean, it's a complete reversal of any reality. No, I see that program as a site. Their intention was, we're going to change minds by sticking this artificial nonsense in there. We're going to change minds, and we're going to make out that white people are the only evil and black people are the only good. White people are the only dumb people. Black people are the only smart people. White people have no morals. Black people have very high morals. White people are all criminals. Black people are all law-abiding citizens, and so on. So this, in my view, is a PSYOP. I don't think it's a question of PSYOP. Now, I go into a doctor's. I've got as I've mentioned before, I've got an elderly relative who I help out. In fact, I did most of it, taking her to the doctors and the medical specialists and the like. And she couldn't manage without my help. So, but I go into doctors' waiting rooms and surgeries, and you see signs of you report family abuse, and the picture is of a man abusing a woman. You report racism, you report hate, and so everywhere you look in any doctors or government place or any place where people would go in any numbers, libraries, anything at all where government money is involved or subsidies involved, you will see this PSYOP propaganda. Did you know that 1 in 3 women are raped in this city? That's a lie. It's a fucking lie. But that's so the propaganda that they push, propaganda produced by and created by radical feminist lesbians. So we're looking at all of that as a PSYOP. As I look at advertising on online, TV, anywhere, cinema, it depicts mixed race relationships as standard. Sometimes you will not see a single white person in a whole run of adverts, online. Even the gay lesbian relationships are all mixed race, and you will again never see a white couple there in the advertising. So all movies, all TV, everything, wherever you look now, you've got this propaganda shoveled at you. Now, if I go out to the most where areas or suburbs of Sydney where not even 10% of the population is white, and I look for mixed race relationships, you just don't see them. If they're even 1 or 2%, to be super generous, it's 2%. Even amongst younger people, when you even see school kids going by, say I don't know, 15 years old or whatever, you don't see the Chinese hang out in this group, or the mainland Chinese in that group, the Taiwanese Chinese in that group, the Malaysian Chinese in another group, and the Indians in this group, the Pakistanis in that group, the white people in that group, and so on. So it's all divided by, you see it on trains, you see it everywhere, shopping centres, wherever you go, it doesn't matter. You just don't see these mixed race relationships in anywhere near the numbers suggested. The idea that rapes and beatings of women are occurring at this rate is simply fantasy. It's just an absolute invention of the propaganda machine. But we constantly have this shoveled at us, constantly pushed at us. Even in news and current affairs, we're constantly pushed with propaganda. Why is it when a fairly minor affair involving a white person and a black person, where the white person could be portrayed as somehow having done something bad or hateful, why is that an international headline? Whereas hundreds, thousands of events where the black people are oppressing or killing or beating or robbing the Asian or the white or the Jewish or the whatever people, why is that suppressed? Why don't we see that as why is it if a white person does it, it's hate? Why if a black person does it, they've got some genuine grievance? Why are all these things the case? Now, to me, it is all a PSYOP. It is a coordinated attempt to portray white people as bad and evil, and all other races as being somehow oppressed or hard done by. If only they were given a chance, they'd all be geniuses and this sort of stuff. Affirmative action, in employment, it's so brazen now that in employment adverts on the job boards and things like that for well-paying jobs, jobs that are paying 5, 6, 7, 8 times the average wage, that the advert is saying this is specifically for a black person or a black woman, or specifically for a black lesbian, and so on. And you see companies that are announcing their new hires, their affirmative action hires, and they're all black and brown women, and look at this, look how diverse we are, and so on. So I see all these as PSYOPs, the education kids get in school and university, that only white people were involved in slavery and so on. This is all PSYOPs in my view. So when people say, well, it's conspiracy theories, 1 or 2 PSYOPs, I believe PSYOPs are just all around us. They're so entrenched now and so all pervasive that we don't even notice it anymore. We don't actually see it as a PSYOP. We now see the PSYOP as the new normal. So I think that's how bad PSYOPs are and how widespread they are. But immune we've become, in many ways, how immune we've become to the PSYOPs. Now, it could also mean that the PSYOPs just going over the heads of most people. They're just not taking it in. It's just such a constant noise that it's just going right over their heads, and it's not actually changing as many minds as they think. And I come back to the Soviet thing here, that in the Soviet Union, when that all fell apart, and Eastern Europe too, they've been subject to the communist sort of fantasy PSYOP message for, in the case of Eastern Europe, 40 odd years, and the case of the Soviet Union, 70 odd years. And yet, 2 out of 3 people in the Soviet Union weren't taken in about at all, right? And 5 out of 6 people in Eastern Europe were not taken in by it at all. So it actually had a much lesser impact and had not changed many minds at all. Even I met a guy who'd been a ideological political teacher in the Soviet Union, a very privileged position, by the way, and he'd been given that job because they believed that he was a hardcore communist who would really push the message, and he was just extra duplicitous, which is what you needed to be in that sort of community. If you wanted to go places, you had to convince fanatics that you were also a fanatic, as in a communist fanatic, and that would then give you entree into prestigious jobs. It wasn't necessarily pay you got, because there's nothing much you could buy with your money. It was more they would give you a much better apartment. You would jump the queue for like getting a car and other things like a television. You could, instead of having to join the queue and wait 5 years, you'd only have to wait a few weeks, or the apartment would come equipped with a car and a television, these sorts of things. So you also had access to certain shops where Western goods were available, better quality consumer goods and processed foods, things like that, chocolate or whatever, wine and so on. So he'd convinced the authorities that he was a fanatical communist, and he would impart that fanatical communist view to his students. He was like a senior high school political science teacher or some shit like that. So, and that was a prestige because you were passing on the ideology to the next generation, in the same way that you see diversity, equity, inclusion officers in Australia being paid, 2-3 times more than an engineer is getting paid, because they're passing on that ideological fanaticism and entrenching it and embedding it in the society around them. And so that's, in globalist terms, that's a well-paid job because you're furthering the ideology. The engineer who builds a bridge, who gives a fuck? And you saw that same thing in the Soviet Union. The teacher teaching communist ideology was a revered member of the community in certainly party ideological terms, and so was rewarded accordingly. He asserts that he never believed that crap. It was all bullshit, and he projects himself as someone who was so duplicitous he managed to convince all these fanatics around him, the communist fanatics around him, that he was one of them. He waves that around as a badge of honor. Look how I fooled those guys. But when I was listening to him talking, wouldn't want you anywhere near me, buddy. If you're that duplicitous, that skilled with duplicity, then I don't want you around where I am. Fuck. Anyway, that's the thing there. So the PSYOPs are widespread, I believe, and but I think the effect of them. There are people that crawl to it and kowtow to it, of course, because they want some of the gravy, the diversity officer that gets paid a gazillion dollars a year, and it's someone who really is nothing more than a 2-bit receptionist or something like that. So that's I don't think it's having the effect that the globalists think it is. I think when it's no longer the flavour of the month, people will drop it as quickly as they can. But they're embracing it only because it seems the in thing to do. But nonetheless, I think PSYOPs are all around us. I don't think you can go into any government building. I don't think you can look at any program online, or you can see any advert, watch anything, see any entertainment that isn't dedicated to PSYOPing you. You've been a Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.